Hey, it's the Rising podcast with me, Melanie. The Rising is a songwriter album that I hope you love, and this podcast, both totally focused on the event that changed human history, Christ's resurrection. Hey, everybody. First of all, Merry Christmas. So if you're listening to this on Christmas Day or after Christmas Day, we can say Merry Christmas all year round, can't we? And I hope that you have found Emmanuel, which is my Christmas album, which is very similar to The Rising. Every song on Emmanuel tells the story of the Nativity in the first person. And that album is a great soundtrack to Christmas. Today's guest is an incredibly special friend of mine, the author Sally Lloyd-Jones, who many of you may know for her beloved Jesus Storybook Bible and its accompanying podcast, as well as her other well-loved books. Books like Song of the Stars, Thoughts to Make Your Heart Sing, Little One We Knew You'd Come, and her new book, Jesus, Our True Friend. Sally and I have a lot in common, actually. We lived in New York together for many years. Sally is still in New York, but we met years ago at Redeemer. We were neighbors on the Upper West Side, and we went to Redeemer Presbyterian Church together. We have just spent many road trips and dinners and long walks talking about Jesus and our lives and making art. Here on this episode, we're going to talk about the resurrection passages in the Jesus Storybook Bible. And I just love her approach to the resurrection and our faith as a whole through the eyes of a child. I truly can't think of a better voice to help us celebrate Christmas and look again on Jesus' life, death, and resurrection than Sally. I just know you love her warm heart as much as I do. So, without further ado, here is Sally. Sally, congratulations on your newest book, Jesus, Our True Friend. It's an incredible resource. Do you want to share a little bit about Jesus, Our True Friend first before we talk about the resurrection?
I've thought a lot about children's devotional life, but in their devotional life, I sometimes feel what we've forgotten to give them is hope. And I wanted this book to really focus on the place of our hope, which is Jesus, not on ourselves, on what we can do and how good we are, or etc., but on him and how much he loves us. And that, I feel very strongly, children need to know that first of all. So this book was really just a book I wanted children to have to fill them with hope.
Do you feel that that's a fault of the culture in general, that we're just kind of have so much doom in our culture and that we don't realize it's impacting kids also?
It seems to me the equation underneath it is, if I do everything right, then I'll be all right. Well, that's moralism. And I know there's good in that, as there is in all of these things, that there is good. But when it's tilted too much to what I have to do, it's an illusion of control. It's a tyranny. So I think children certainly can catch that. I mean, you just have to think about yourself as a child and the message. A child can get a message that maybe no one was sending them. A child can translate that into very strong rules for themselves.
This morning, it was just so wonderful to go back to Jesus Storybook Bible and read your pages about the resurrection from the Jesus Storybook Bible, because in a lot of ways, I kind of wanted to do that with the songs, right? Like, I want to tell the resurrection story with the songs. And if it's not going too far back in your memory bank in your life, writing Jesus Storybook Bible, did you have to do a lot of research for those sections? Or how did you approach the resurrection sequences? Because it's a lot. I mean, this is like the fundamental event of all human history, and trying to distill it. Do you remember that experience, or can you share at all about that?
I took a year to write the book, but most of the work was the research, because I had to get the theology. I had to really understand it if I was going to simplify down for a child, but not dumb down. So that was true of the whole book. But what was really strange was I was writing, and this must have been no accident, but I wrote in order. So I had been writing through the whole of the book, and I get to the Passion, and it's happening in real time during Holy Week that I'm writing these stories. So it was really meaningful, and I found that a great blessing.
What was your research like? Like, what resources did you go to? Because I had to do that too. I really felt like I wanted that as well, that substance behind it.
I'll do a terrible name drop now, but David Suchet, who is Poirot, for anyone who knows Poirot, he's a wonderful Shakespearean British actor, and he narrates the whole Bible if you do NIV UK. So that's a little plug for him. But I was with him in June because he was recording Jesus, Our True Friend. And he said, because he recorded the entire Bible for audio, and I asked him how long it took him. And I think he said it took him 500 hours and 300 or something like that. 300 hours were to get the theology right so that he could have the right tone in order to narrate it. And I sort of feel like, well, that's exactly what you have to do if you're going to be accurate. And so for me, that involved, I did a class of 40, back when it was cassette tapes, 40 tapes that were the progress of redemption, so that I knew how the whole of the Bible connected. What I didn't want was random, disconnected stories. I wanted them all to lead to each other, and I needed to understand how they connected. And then on top of that, then for each story, I was soaking myself in commentaries and sermons and making sure I had the right tone and the right angle. Like, as a songwriter, you've got to choose. For me, it was like choosing one facet for each story. I had to choose kind of one facet. If I was painting a portrait of Jesus, is how it really felt across that book. And each story was a facet of him. So I had to choose the one that really moved me.
It's a bit mysterious, the process. You have to trust some sort of invisible inner conviction. Because I did something similar, like reading material. I wanted to read ancient commentaries on the resurrection and what the gospel accounts were, and could we trust the gospel accounts? And it's not like all of that information literally went into anything. I was just trying to make sure I had nutrition. It's almost like, did I have nutrition as the writer, the songwriter, and then kind of trust my body to metabolize it and for the right things to come out?
When you're writing a story, it's like an iceberg. You just see the top of it, but underneath, what you don't see is the huge iceberg underneath the water that is all the stuff you don't put in the story, but is informing everything about the story. And that comes back to what you and I share, which is because we're distilling down, because we're both telling a story in two languages, you're music and lyrics, and I'm word and image. And you have to really distill it down. It's what Miles Davis said, listen to what I can leave out.
So I love, you talk about Mary Magdalene, you talk about Jesus eating food with the disciples, but there's other episodes in the gospel accounts that you left out of Jesus Storybook Bible. I did the same thing. Like, I included certain songs. What was that selection process for you?
What's so interesting is the format of the book. It has to be holdable by a little child. That's the first limit. So you only can have so many stories. So if you want a story that's going to have enough illustration, it's got to be at least 4 spreads, maybe 5. That immediately limits. So I had 44 stories. So half of those, I only had maybe 21 or 20 for the New Testament. And it really then starts to really narrow down what you can put in. And so you have to have the key stories that tell the through story. So for instance, I don't have Doubting Thomas because that isn't necessary for the through story. You have to be, in order for the book to be not too huge for a child, you really had to make big decisions. And also, it's a retelling, it's not a translation. I always like to remind people, it's a storybook, it's a retelling, hopefully to open the child up to wonder and be amazed and then want to read the actual full Bible ultimately. But yeah, the decisions for me were a lot to do with what's good to illustrate, but also what do I absolutely are the non-negotiables I have to have. And I wanted also, if I did too many of the resurrection, then I wouldn't have room for anything about Paul or Revelation. I wouldn't be able to represent the New Testament in an overview.
It was like a technical decision, and then it was technical and theological.
Yes. Having the limit was helpful. It's like Dr. Seuss. Do you know the story of Dr. Seuss?
No, but all artists love limits. I mean, I love limits, and I write wonderfully within limits. Yeah.
So Dr. Seuss was told, you have this many words, and I need, by this friend who was a publisher, could you write us a story using, these limited number of words because it's going to be an early reader type thing. And the first 2 words in that list was cat and hat. It's just wonderful evidence of the limits are actually your friends because they force you to be really distilled.
I love what you included, something about the angel greets the friends at the tomb and laughs. That the angel laughs, which isn't in the gospel accounts. Like, we're not told literally that the angel laughed. I did little things like that too in the songs, just like imagined things or like added little moments. And how did things like that come to you, that the angel might have laughed with joy telling the disciples that Jesus had risen? Did you imagine yourself in those scenes, or did you kind of take a walk and wonder what they were like? Or how did you get to those artistic decisions?
I think I was putting myself in the story and just thinking about the angel and what better news could you possibly have? Sort of funny almost. What are you doing here? This is a tomb, and tombs are for dead people.
Right.
That's such great news. I also was thinking about that verse about the angels long to look into the gospel. They can't get enough of the beauty of the gospel. They can't stop wondering, and they long to look into the depth of it. And I just thought, what a privilege for that angel to be telling them this is the high point of all of history. I just couldn't imagine he wouldn't laugh. And for children, what you're trying to do, for an adult, you could say something, describe the joy or something, and you've got limited words. I could only have 500 words, around 500 a story. You've got to get the emotion across as effectively as you can. And children are so full of laughter, they understand that.
I know just from our years of conversations how much you really respect children and their view. Did you have in mind, there's the child who's in a Christian home with Christian parents going through Jesus Storybook Bible, in that sort of atmosphere. But I also know children who aren't in a Christian home who have Jesus Storybook Bible given to them by a friend or a family member. Writing to like a Christian child who maybe has a structure like Sunday school or something else in their lives that's pointing them to the gospel, and also reaching children who don't have that. Did you find that you were writing to both of them at the same time, or is there even a difference in your mind between the two? I mean, it's kind of like in adult speak, we'll say like the skeptic versus the Christian, What was that experience like, if it
Well,
even factored in?
my calling, I know, is to bring joy to children, whether it's telling a story of some goldfish that went on vacation or whether it's telling them a story of the resurrection. I don't distinguish because I think C.S. Lewis said, there's no such thing as Christian cookery. There's either good cookery or bad. And I was just thinking, how do I tell the gospel and make it show the beauty of the gospel to a child who really, whether that child is in a church home or not a church home, may never have really understood anything about how much God loves them. So that was helpful because in a way then the book, if it can reach someone who's never, and you and I both, we're so steeped in Tim Keller's wonderful ministry and teaching. And what I always appreciate about him, and one of the things I really learned from him, was his hospitality to someone coming to church who had never been to church. And everything he did was welcoming. And I've never forgotten that. And I think it's influenced me without realizing that I'm always thinking to be hospitable to everyone and not be in some kind of club.
That's right. Even down to the language you use, because we all know Christian language can be really like cliche and insidery, and someone on the outside would be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And it can be lazy. We're just saying the words, but we're not actually being moved by the reality of them. So it's a wonderful exercise.
Well, and we all know too that it's like you can be an 80-year-old sitting in church every Sunday and still really not know how much God loves you.
Well, someone said people don't like grace, they like works. We like to feel that something's up to us, that surely there's something we can do, which, if that's the basis of your salvation, no, that's terrible. Yes, there's things we can do, but it has to come out of knowing what he's already done for us. It's out of love, not earning.
I've spent 2 years just thinking about the resurrection, and while I was writing the songs and trying to put the album out, and I told a friend, if the only thing I get out of this album is a renewed conviction that this actually happened in history, then that's enough, because that is kind of what happened.
Was it like a revival for you?
Yes, I mean, emotionally for sure, but then also I think since I've become a Christian, I've had an inner conviction that Jesus is alive because I know his presence. I know he's alive. I just know he is. But I had never looked at the resurrection from a historical perspective and all the overwhelming evidence there is that this happened, right? So then that's yet another wonderful place to come from where we can bank on this, that this happened as surely as all the other historical events that are accounted for. It's like there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of evidence. But then it also made me think, and it kind of ties into what you just said about we love works. I'm in a Christian tradition that really focuses on the work of Christ's death, the work of his crucifixion, and that the requirements for salvation, right? And sometimes I feel like that's the leading message we give to the world. Christ had to die. Like, we are sinful creatures. Christ's death was part of the remedy for this. But I'm like, should our leading message actually be Christ rose from the dead? Let's go back 2,000 years that this event, the Christian claim is that Christ rose from the dead. So like, let's start from there. Can we get someone to believe that and present evidence and then kind of unwind it? But it's a much more hopeful message.
Yes, exactly.
You said in Jesus Storybook Bible, the sun stopped shining. Is that exactly how you wrote it?
Yeah, she said.
The sun stopped shining. I wrote a song called The Morning, which is the morning talking about how the sun was obscured while Christ was in the tomb. This is what you wrote. Do you mind if I read what you wrote really quick? You say, even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the world. The sun could not shine, the earth trembled and quaked, the great mountains shook, rocks split into two, until it seemed that the whole world would break, that creation itself would tear apart. You touched on it a little bit, but can you walk us through as a writer and maybe help other writers who want to bring to life these scenes, these biblical scenes, how you use your imagination to give color to these events?
When I'm writing, it comes from being moved myself. I know I'll go back and I'll revise and I'll eliminate and all of that. But the first draft, I have to be writing from that place of worship in a way. I mean, whether it's a Bible story or it's a story about goldfish or whatever, it's ultimately worship. And it's getting out of my own way and being so caught up with the story I'm telling and the emotion of how I'm feeling it. And because I'd written all of these stories in sequence, it was like you with your album. You're kind of being moved in a whole new way by the incredible journey to the cross that started back in Genesis. It's just finding words that young children can understand as well.
Yeah, and maybe there's something to not overthinking it, just trusting what is moving your own heart, and that if it's moving your heart, it's going to move somebody else.
Frost said, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. I think that's a mysterious, wonderful thing because it isn't in our control. Our job is to have our imaginations on fire and write from a place of truth. And then the mystery of it is that if you're telling the truth like that, you're not putting it on, you're not faking it, then it will have power. And the power miraculously will come to the reader. I think that's what makes it also wonderful.
What do you think of the purist camp? That's like, the scripture didn't say that. So like you're adding to the scriptures, or you're like extra biblical, or, kind of veering off into an exploratory way of looking at the scriptures. Do you have any comment about that?
The first thing I say is it's not a translation. This is not a translation. It's a retelling. And what you'll notice when you first start the Jesus Storybook Bible is that I have a narrator. And the reason I have a narrator, which happened because a friend happened to tell me when I was starting to research the book, told me the story of Luther and how when Luther was translating the Bible into German, he wanted to find out what tone he should use. And he considered going into the universities and listening to the academics. But then he said, no, we need to go into the home and we need to listen to a mother speaking to her children. And without me even kind of really realizing, I just began to be the mother speaking to her children.
Wow.
And that gave me the freedom, because I'm a storyteller. I have a narrator to do asides, to do little explanations that are not in the Bible, but I can do that because I'm telling a story to children. So that's the context. And then I think it's sort of amplifying what is there. A lot of times it'll be finding different words to say what is actually there. It's just saying it in a more easy to understand way.
I had never heard that story about Luther. I love hearing it. Wow, that's amazing.
It's guided me all along because it gave me a narrator without realizing. And then that freed me. So yes, I must say it's a very awesome responsibility. And you never want to take liberties. And at the same time, how are you going to convey the gospel and make it display beautifully for a child? So you don't want to be so correct in the sense of rigid. A retelling will have to have imagination.
What would you say to a younger writer for children or for adults, but wants to write about the scriptures and not from a commentary point of view, but from a storytelling point of view? Do you have any words of advice or any places for someone to begin this sacred work?
I think you want your imagination to catch fire and you need to write what only you can write. So don't try and sound like someone else because they're going to do that better than you. You're better off writing the thing that only you can write. What that means is everything about your life, what you've read, where you grew up, your background, everything will feed into what will make you unique. So for me, writers like Frederick Buechner, C.S. Lewis, Brennan Manning, and Tim Keller's ministry, all these incredible writers that I've read over my life. I didn't read them so that I could write the Jesus Storybook Bible. I just loved reading them. But they seep in, and I think it forms you. So I think reading is huge. Someone said you should follow your weirdness, which is another way of saying write the story that only you can write.
What is next for you, Sally? Where can people who are following your work look for you next?
My new book is just out, and it's called Jesus, Our True Friend, Stories to Fill Your Heart with Joy. And there's 7 stories that I've never had the chance to retell. And it's Jago illustrating, and it's really beautiful. And I hope that that one will actually bring a lot of hope to people. And it's just beautiful. So I think people will like that. And then other than that, I'm working on some picture books and a novel for 8 to 12-year-olds. But those are still in the hopper.
We have to say Merry Christmas. I know I've been talking about the resurrection, but we have to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And everyone where they are celebrating, hopefully with loved ones, but maybe we're your loved ones today, and we're so honored to be your loved ones. Sally, I think you have a couple of Christmas readings for us. Would you give them to us?
I would love that. They're just 2 verses that I love. And one of them is Malachi chapter 4, verse 2, where God makes this promise about the coming joy. And it goes, quote, "But for you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays, and you will go out and frolic like well-fed calves." And then I love the connection between that and Luke 1, verse 78, when Zechariah, who hasn't been able to speak, at last can speak. He praises God and prophesies and says, "Because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven." And those 2 readings together just I find very moving. The Son of Righteousness has come with healing in his wings.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. May you have a very Merry Christmas. And remember, Christ came for you. Hey, everybody, thanks for listening to the Rising podcast as we look further into the resurrection of Jesus. Would so love it if you'd subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and you can find new episodes on any of those platforms as well. Did you know The Rising is also an album? The Rising is an album that I wrote that tells the story of Christ's resurrection. Each song on the album is written from a different perspective of someone who was actually there at the resurrection. Each guest on The Rising also has a perspective. And you know what? So do you. I would venture to say that your perspective is the one that I'm most interested in. If you want to get to know me better, you can find me on Instagram or go to melaniepenn.com and you can send me a message there. I make things for you, and I'm so glad that you are here for The Rising.